Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews, this being a show where I talk about TV shows that are dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the Season 3 finale of The Bear. Great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I love like this overarching thing that, especially in this episode in particular, the message of the most important thing isn't the food. That's not what's going to be remembered. It's the people. That was a lesson that Carmi was taught, or when he was working at the French Laundry, Thomas had taught him that. You know, and even like the whole wishbone thing, which I wonder, because like, well, Carmi pulled out a few, so I'm curious, like, did he ever actually use any of those said wishbones to kind of make a wish? It's childish, but it's still, you know, kind of a traditional thing that I'm curious, like, did he ever take part in using any of them? But it's like, yeah, like, why do you cook food? It isn't just to be like a chef, because it's like, at the end of the day, we're not just we're servicing people, and that's what it's all about. And I think that's where like Carmi kind of lost it this season. It wasn't really about what other people enjoyed. It's so about getting the dish so right and getting it perfect. You're not focusing on the people, which Richie was trying to focus on the people, but even he lost his way. Once again, it's like because him and Richie weren't in sync, Carmi got so lost in his chef head, because he wasn't listening to other people trying to rein him in. He just was so on his own island. So I thought that was interesting. The entire party, him and Richie never actually interact. He's staring at photos of all these different chefs. Carmi is, and then Richie goes by. And I love that, just like there's like a hook on one of the hanging ornaments, and he just like unhooks it, and just so it can like, you know, not be tangled. It's just like little stuff like that. He goes in to see some of the staff like Garrett and Jess, and they're like, oh yeah, we hung up your jersey. He's like, yeah, you're lucky I wasn't here longer, because they were like, oh, so we would have retired your jersey anyway. He's like, yeah, but I would have been immaculate, I would have killed it and stuff like that. So he'd rather be back there in the mix of everything with the group. And I just love Garrett be like, yo, it's my boy Richie, because it's this beautiful full-on reunion. Because like this probably is his first time back to ever, because I mean he's been in the grind of everything in the Bear, so there's probably no time to just chill here. So I don't know if that, I mean, who knows how often he talked to Jess, like when the news dropped, like that episode. I don't know if that was like the first time he talked to Jess since working there or what. I love the whole thing like, yeah, you were here for 4 days. He's like, 5, get it right, you know. So because I knew he was there for a week, but it makes sense because I mean they're probably closed over the weekend, so they probably work like 5 out of 7 days maybe, considering they said he was only here for 4 or 5 days. So but it is kind of this beautiful thing of just like reunions. Of course, Luca's going to be there. It makes the most sense. And so it is this kind of like beautiful thing of like, oh, here's all these chefs. They are real chefs, because if you look at the cast at the end, like the names, it's like the characters' names are the same. It's like, yeah, these people are actual legitimate chefs. So it is kind of this interesting gathering of chefs, and it's just, there's so much history here at Ever in general. But once again, we already had that conversation previously about how every time you bring some of that history with you and sprouting, you know, the whole family tree conversation that Carmi had with Marcus. So I thought that was so neat. And then all Carmi can focus on is David, which I thought was like, yeah, that's interesting. And David's just kind of looking at him, looking all smart. It's like Joe McHale, I'm sure he leans into it the most too. Like he plays a lot of asshole characters, you know, so he's just like, oh, but he really, really leans into it. Like David is just so like smug, and you're just like, you feel it. You were like Carmi. You weren't like, you're kind of, the entire time I was like, don't do it, because I'm like, you're not gonna punch him, are you? It's like, well, like Carmi's a yeller, but he isn't a scrapper necessarily, you know. It's there in him, but that's just not him. But he probably throw hands a little bit, but he's not the fighter. So, which is interesting considering like he was in Iron Claw, which is about wrestling and stuff like that. But either way, tangents and all that aside. But yeah, I love how Luca. I love that we've gotten this, because we got one view of Luca last season, and that's when he was with Marcus, where it seemed like, yo, he's so cool, calm and collected. He's got this on wrap. Like, he's kind of like Carmi, and you see him like in episode 1 out of his element, because that's him learning. Like we've seen the finished product, but even then there is no finished product, because you're always learning, you're always growing. But I love at this party we get to see him being awkward. He's asking the chef all these questions, and the chef's just giving him like these 1 to 3 word responses, and he's just having more and more questions. And the guy's like, I gotta go, and he's like, and Luke's just like, why did I say the word needle so many times? I'm like, I love seeing you so awkward. I love it. You put Carmi to, well, because at least you're trying to be social, but I'm also like, dude, it's a celebration. I mean, they end up talking a little bit about food and stuff like that, but it's like him just asking question after question. It's like, bro, we're trying to have a good time. Like, this isn't work, homie. Like, this ain't business hours. We could chill. But like Lucas, like, I get it. He's like, oh my god, like, when other opportunity I'm gonna have like so many great chefs around, so I want to learn, and grow. Like it's an ever growing process. So but we have Carmi sit down with Sid at the table with Luca and all these other chefs, and it is that conversation once again, sharing fun stories about their dishes. I even love Sid try to like, she threw in like, none of you left over like a pre-order option open. Like, oh yeah, no. She's like, no, I'm just throwing it out there. It's just like these fun stories about the messes. But obviously a lot like, and that's the sad thing, is like Carmi's silent the entire scene because all he can do is focus on David. Because there's also these conversations about like, right, you're typically like only way, like kind of like once again this conversation I've constantly had throughout this season about generational trauma and how that also applies to chefs, because it's like, yeah, you have a bad boss who kind of brings stuff down upon you. Obviously Carmi has that with David, but he's also, that's kind of trickled down to him, and you get the flashes of like him popping off and a lot of the same stuff David said to him, not to the exact extent, but some of the same language and the way he said some stuff. Even in some of the stuff we haven't seen this season, how he talked to people was very much like David, because he was in his David bag this season. But I mean, it was already there. It's integrated into Carmi. It's how he got good, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, it's just kind of like the whole conversation about like, yeah, the people around you. Like have and Sid was thinking about when she spilled, what was it like the gravy or the stock or something in season 1, and Marcus helped her up. It's like, hey, it's about the people that are around you too. Having a good surrounding like environment, it kind of helps you grow. And so it's kind of like it's playing into the fact that Sid's not sure whether should I stay or should I go. And then on top of that, Carmi's just so like, once again, his focus is never where it's supposed to be. He's not here in this moment. He's there focusing on David, because here's the ire of your life. This guy who you hate with a passion. The guy you kind of blame a lot for why you're as fucked up as you are. It's not just on your parents. It's not just on your mom and your family. It's also on him too. He played a big role in making you into the great chef that you are, but also the fucked up chef that you are. So there's just all that circling, and like I said, he's just not part of the conversation. We even found out from I was literally about to call him Will. I was about to call Will by his real name. Luca talked about like the peas that him and Carmi like worked here, and was like having to constantly like do the pea situation with the peas, and he's like, yo, I actually took that trauma and I turned it into a dish, which we know that Marcus kind of did that for Carmi last season, making that cannoli dish, and calling it the Michael. So, but I think that's one thing, but even then it's like he himself hadn't fully, like I think he came up with some of the concept, but I think it was on Marcus. But I don't think he's fully taken anything back in the same regard, because basically Luca took the peas and he now applies it to like a dessert that he does. So it's like, yeah, the trauma, it's his way of kind of dealing with it by making a dish out of it, which like I said, just kind of parallels the Carmi thing too. So, but it's not like a hidden secret. Everyone knows David's a prick, because Carmi kept staring, and Luca's like, yo, you're good? You good? You're just staring. It's like, who is it? It's like, yeah, that asshole over there. It's like, oh yeah, like basically fuck him. He sucks. And gets up and Sid's like, yeah, that's probably not going to end well, is in Luca's like, no, it's probably not. Right? Good bet that it's not. And Carmi confronts him, and he doesn't have the decency to call Carmi by his real like proper last, because he's like, oh, Bergazzo or something like that. Didn't even get his name right, because for Carmi it's like, I constantly think about you, and he says a line of, I don't think about you. It's like, fuck you. It's like, oh, that's what I'm saying. He has such like, I don't know, Joel McHale I feel so bad for him, because like I don't know if people translate that to him in real life, where it's like, man, you have such a, the characters you play are so punchable. I just hope it never becomes a thing of like, oh yeah, people translate that because of your face associated with these characters. Joe McHale has a punchable face. It's like, no, his characters have a punchable face, even though it's his face. You get what I'm trying to say, right? So That is, and just he's kind of saying like you're welcome, because like for Carmi it's like you're the reason why I'm fucked up like I am. Like I had ulcers and panic attacks. Like you are the root of it all. And he's like, yeah, you should be thanking me. It's like you came to me as an okay chef and you left excellent. And it's like, yeah, but the fact is I can't have a normal functioning life. I am not a functioning human being. And he's like, yeah, that's what it takes. Like, you got rid of all the bullshit, which is the exact words that he basically said love was bullshit. He said Claire was bullshit because of all that. And you're like, fuck, dude. It's like, this guy is a core piece of your trauma. He is something that kind of latched onto you, and he's been there. Just as, like, Carmi's, like, thinking about every single thing, just, like, obviously... David's like always at the core of that memory too, and he's just like, I never knew what I was going to say to you, and he was like, fuck you, and he's like, anything else? He's like, beyond fuck you, I didn't think that far ahead. He's like, anything in particular? He's like, for everything, just being an asshole in general, and just like him just being so laissez-faire, like, okay, I'm gonna go piss now, you know, but you're welcome for me making you the great chef that you are. You should be thanking me. Look at where you are. It's just like, you fucker, you fucking piece of shit. You know, it just like Carmi, that tear running down his eyes, and he just doesn't know what to do. It's just like he's so infuriated, he's so sad, and it's almost like this. I think maybe there's also this realization of I can't put it on him. Regardless, like he doesn't care. Like the fact is, this means so much to me. It had such a negative impact on me that it didn't mean jack shit to this motherfucker, because he's just an asshole, and it's just like, yeah, I got good. But it didn't mean shit because now I'm standing alone and I'm surrounded by people, yet I'm still so alone. Like, if anything, like Richie being like alone, like, you know, that whole conversation about, you know, Tiff and Ava, but it's still the thing of, yeah, like Carmi's kind of on an island on his own, you know, an island of his making. And also, you know, we are a byproduct of our experiences, as well as, you know, the nature versus nurture conversation. So a lot of it is just the nurture of it all. Like everything that Carmen's experience has made him into who he is, and just it's just everything in conjunction has just made him not functional as a person in a lot of ways. Which, once again, I have a lot of qualities about me that are not. I don't know how to be like. It feels weird to say like like things that do come so natural to people, like just talking to people. It's like, I mean, you know, that's a me thing. Like, you know, there's a lot of people with like social anxiety and stuff, but it's like, I feel like I don't know how to, I put myself in a position where I just don't know how to function as a human being sometimes. It's like, it feels so foreign and alien sometimes in the world. It's such a weird thing to say, but it feels like Carmen has that too. I mean, maybe I'm deflecting so much of my own personal bullshit onto this character, but it's like when I see how fucked up he is, I'm like, hey, I'm kind of like Carmen. It's not the same. I'm not trying to like ingratiate my circumstances and making them exact, but it's like I can see certain parallels of like, oh, the way Carmen thinks. I'm like, I can understand it because I've thought like that before. I, you know, think like that from time to time in some capacities, you know, So that's what Carmen has to kind of, you know, deal with. And it's just like, he got no resolution in it. It's kind of like, yeah, you got to say, yeah, I got to say fuck you. I got to say what I wanted to say. But it's like, it walked away probably feeling like empty. And it's just like, was it even worth it? It's like, once again, it didn't mean anything to that guy. He just didn't go off and continue being an asshole, being unaffected, even though like he had such a massive effect on your life. Because him doing what he did has pushed you to be like, the assholery is chef trauma as well, because now he's an asshole to other people. The way David pushed him, because like Terry would push him a little, sure, but like Terry was never to that extreme. Like we've seen the people Carmen's worked with, no one has been like David. I mean, especially because David was the most recent, because he was working with David up until like a year or so ago. Like, because it was like, yeah, he was back in New York at the time, so he only came back after Mikey died. So this is like the most recent person he had worked for, because it'd been a while since he was at Ever or at the French Laundry, so, or Noma, you know, so it's a lot. You had that conversation between Richie and Jess, which I thought was so dope. He was trying to understand, like, how do you stay inspired? What's the secret to it? She's like, they're kind of, I mean, there's not a secret, but it's just kind of like, you surround yourself by people who are better. And he's like, oh, like, you know, I was talking about outside of work. She's like, I wasn't talking about work. And he's like, oh, so that's the secret? She's like, yes, and keep it to yourself. You can't let other people know. But because I keep bringing it up all the time, like they have each other at the restaurant, but it's like outside of the restaurant, like, I mean, you know, different people have different people, because like, you know, Nat has Pete and She has Pete and now the baby. She does have her mom, despite the complicated relationship there. She does have Carmen. She has Richie, and obviously everyone from the restaurant, but it's also like people outside of the restaurant. We don't know like who they necessarily have, you know? Like who does Gary have outside of the restaurant? Neil and Ted, it's like, well, they've got the entire FAC troupe, you know, backing them. Sid's got her dad, which that we'll talk about that in a second. So, but it's like, who does Richie have? I mean, he has Tiff and Eva, but it's like, you know, I think that storyline's probably meant to inspire him to like, nah, like I will straight up RSVP. I will go to the wedding because those are like Tiff is better than me and my daughter's better than me and Frank seems like a pretty good guy. So, you know, ingratiate them into his life more and keep them in his life and not trying to back out like he was talking with Nat a couple episodes ago. So that's what I'm kind of taking from that conversation. But getting back to what I was bringing up before with Sid, I love her and Luca talking about the conversation about siblings. Her being an only child, he's like, oh, like at least if you have other siblings, like you get the good and the bad of like, oh yeah, like they get praised for the good, but you also get to share the blame of some of the bad. But like Sid never had to deal with that. She only got all the good praise and love, but never had to deal with like any. Because I think that's just probably who Sid was as a kid. Probably is what that's probably supposed to mean, or just like that's her parents didn't operate in that capacity. But it's like, oh, because like Luca did mention last season to Marcus about having a sister he lost touch with. It's like, yeah, but she's my best friend, and you know, he's glad to like reconnect because he's like, there is this interesting bond that you have as family, as siblings. It's like we both went through the shit together. You know, it's like the stuff that we get to look at it and being like, oh, that was kind of fucked, wasn't it? And it's like, yeah, but you also get the good, which, you know, once again parallels nicely with Carmen. But I think their situation being as it is, like we you know, it's just like the opening of Fishes of like, yeah, all three of them together being like, yeah, all right, let's deal with mom, you know. So it is that thing of like, it is kind of that thematic element is like brought back in that conversation with Luca. It's sad I don't think they always kept that same energy, but it's also like kind of like Luca said, like he kind of lost touch with his sister for a while, but he's going to be here in the States for a while, just trying to like, you know, be around her. And, you know, Sid, her best friend is her dad. And it's like outside of your dad, she kind of doesn't really have anyone else outside of that circle except for the people at the restaurant, which was the point I was making before. And I love Adam comes up and he's like, oh, hey, Sid. Oh, hey, Luca. Oh, you still doing that cooking thing? And he's like, oh, yeah, you still leaving your fingerprints everywhere? He's like, joke about smudges. Is like, which I love. That was a whole thing in episode 7 last season about the smudge and everything. But he's like, yeah, I just love the whole, like, there's love there, being like, giving him the bird and being like, love you. He gives him the bird back, love you too. I just love that. And so Adam is asking Sid, but Sid's still so unclear. It's like, oh, have you talked to Carmen about it? He's like, no, I just haven't found the right time. He's like, it kind of never really is. She's hesitant to pull the trigger because it's just, she just doesn't know what she wants to do yet. And it's scary because she doesn't want to leave Carmen high and dry, but... And it's just like, there's so much good associated with the restaurant, but there's bad associated with it too. Because that was also a conversation with the chefs about like, oh yeah, you make something and like someone that you're like look up to tells you it's good. And she thinks back to that risotto from season 1 of being like, oh, him being like, it's not there yet. So she kind of felt that a little bit because I don't know she's gotten that full praise from Carmen yet. Like, I'm trying to think in retrospect, it's like she probably, I don't think she's gotten the full, because he was like great, but he was like, it's not there, it's not done, chef, it's not there, it's almost there. That's all she's kind of really gotten for him in that regard. So, and obviously that the next episode was the review episode, and he was just so like passive aggressive when it came to that dish. So there's, which I'm assuming like that might be Sid's thing of taking that risotto and doing something else with it in the future potentially, considering the trauma associated with that whole chaotic episode. But also we had Chef Terry, you know, talking about everything. Going back once again, continuing that element about people. For her, it's like, yes, so many people who've come and done so many things over the years that have been, for her, it's like when she's able to look around this restaurant and see so many people who are connected to this place. Once again, the people are what matter, not the dishes. You know, that's what she wants any person that came into this restaurant to remember: the people, the service, and stuff like that. Not necessarily, oh yeah, the food was good, but it's like the thing that you will remember is the people and how they were and who they were and that they were excellent, you know. So I thought that was kind of neat. And her conversation with Carmen later was nice. I do love that before she did her speech, she kind of blew a kiss to Richie. He blew one back to her. I was like, oh, that's so cute. But yeah, she talks to Carmen and found out, like, oh, you finally quit smoking. He's like, yeah. And he's like, you? And she's like, oh, I just started. And it's like, oh, that's fucking hilarious. Him telling Terry how important this place was to him. It's like, I didn't tell you how much I learned. She's like, oh, how much? You know, he's like, a lot of it. And she's like, yeah, look at what you've kind of been able to do for yourself, Carmen, where you're at. You're, you know, it's the end of my story, but like, here you are, like, well, the end of my journey as a chef and everything. But she's like, here you are at the beginning of yours. That's so dope and great to see where you've grown and what you've accomplished. And basically, she explains to Carmen, like, right, she wants to live. You know, like living her life. That's why she's finally calling it quits, which Jess kind of already talked to Richie about that, but like Richie and Carmen haven't been talking on a personal level. So this is Carmen's first time hearing that information. And I'm sure that's kind of making him question, like, do I want to keep doing this? Do I even love it? Like, you know, because like even some of those other chefs are like, yeah, they fell out of love with it, but then they found a new inspiration and new love for it, specifically when it came to people. So I even love, you know, Carmen was like, if you could talk to your past self, where like the you that was in my shoes, like starting out, what would you tell her? And she was kind of like, I'm blanking on the exact word. I'm trying to remember. Someone correct me. I think it was kind of along the lines that everything was going to be like, okay, kind of sort of like that every day was kind of like a learning experience. Like you're not going to get it. I'm butchering it. I'm sure I'm probably not even getting even close. I don't remember, but it was so dope what she said because it was something Carmen needed to hear. You know, and I also love the line of, oh, like, can you also do me a favor? He's like, yes. Like the next time we see each other, can you call me Andrea? And he was like, yes, chef. I was like, that's dope. I even love like they, after, you know, took down the every second count sign and gave it to Terry. So it's like, all right, let's get out of here. They go back to Sid's place and they're partying it up. Marcus, Tina, Neil, and Ted show up, and it's just a party. And just like, oh my God, Andrea Terry is going through my fridge, and the only thing in here is waffles and pizza. And it's like, all right, we'll make this happen. And I love that she does the Salt Bae thing, and she's like, what the fuck is this? It just goes into your cup. I was like, I love that so much. Hearing Chef Terry like talk like that, just because, yeah, like, fuck it. You got some alcohol in their system. Like, we're vibing, we're doing our thing. Like, everyone's having so much fun. I just want to look little things like, yo, Marcus being able to kind of dap up with Luca. Probably hasn't like talked to him since he was in Kobe. It's just stuff like that is so dope, and everyone's like partying and enjoying it. And then we have Sid, who ends up looking at like I think it was like a review on the fridge for the beef, and that just kind of set her mind ablaze of like, once again, what she's going to do. She makes an excuse to leave, and she proceeds to have a panic attack outside the hallway because she doesn't know what to do. It's like she's thinking about the beef, she loves it, or like the bear, and it's like there's good, there's bad, and it's like what she wants to make a name for herself, and like, right, it's coming down to the wire, and she hasn't talked to Carmen about it, and it's just like, because obviously Adam's not going to talk about it until Carmen talks to Sid, and it's just like, so that she has a chance to kind of talk to him about it. Just hearing her just kind of panic. I mean, it's almost like I legitimately think she is worse off than she was in season 2's finale. She was throwing up, nervous as shit, but I think this is just on a whole other level. But like I said, it feels poetic considering what David did to Carmi, making him like have panic attacks and stuff, and now Carmi's playing a role into making Sid in that same boat. But I think it's a little bit more. Like, I think Carmen is a piece of that puzzle, but it's just the bear and everything and everyone all together, and it's just a lot. It's actually sad hearing, like, seeing her having a panic attack in the hallway, just kind of breaking down while everyone's inside having fun. It's almost like Carmi, like, not knowing how to have fun. I mean, he's off on his own right now. I don't even know if he was going to go over to Sid's and enjoy the party. Like, who knows? He was just wandering on his own. Maybe he was going to, but he looks at his phone, got a Google alert about the review. Cicero was hitting him up, computer was hitting him up, but he missed all of that. So he reads the review. We actually don't get to, like, actually see what the review was. We get keywords of, like, oh, it was brilliant, this or that, disappointed, tired, talent, and it's just like, it must not have been a good review, because in that moment, Carmi's like, motherfucker, and that's where we end. We got an actual to be continued, which was wild, because we hadn't gotten that. Because I haven't talked about it, but I always forget to think about it. Like, the show is interesting how it is, like, labeled. Like, for the show itself, yeah, it's like outside the show, you can label these like seasons and stuff, but they're broken down into parts. So, like, this is part 3, so it is kind of it's playing into this thing of, like, it's not like season by season, that this is one large overarching story broken down into parts. There was part 1, which was the beef. Part 2 was making the bear. Part 3 was living with the bear. And now part 4 is going to be, what is the aftermath of all this? Because once again, Cicero's pulling out all his money. Like, he's going to, like, cut bait, cut the line the moment, like, the review comes out. And it's like, was it a negative review? It seems like it was. So where does this go? We'll have to wait and see. I do think it's so interesting, too, like I said, getting that to be continued, especially considered so much of this season was not resolved, because Sid and Carmen had not resolved anything. Richie, the one that surprised me the most was, I was expecting maybe by the end Richie and Carmen would, like, piece up, especially with the Ever situation. Nope. Their situation's still completely and utterly fucked. Everyone else at the restaurant's kind of doing better, like Ibra, Tina, Marcus, and Gary, they're finding their ebb and flow. Like, Sid's kind of torn in between. Carmen's once again on his own island. Richie's kind of often, like, everyone's kind of splintered. Not as much, because it's like, well, she's got the baby to focus on now. So, but it's like, also the bear. I mean, not the bear. The bear in general. That, yes, but I was meant to say, like, Carmen and his mom. At least in the confines of the show that we've seen, he was told last episode by Jimmy to call his mom and talk to her. We don't know if he's done that. Doesn't seem like he did. But there's also the element of him and Claire, like, that has not been resolved. So there's a lot of massive through lines of stuff that was not resolved this season. Like, it's so much of the aftermath of season 2, like, built and built and built throughout this season and has been left unresolved. So the show is coming back for 4th season. It was pretty quickly renewed. I saw on IMDb, usually they don't put that stuff, because if you look, there's a page for season 4. It's like, usually you don't do that unless that's kind of a confirmed situation. So yeah, but coming back for a 4th season. So most likely won't be, I mean, I'm sure it's going to be interesting to see when production for that even starts, considering, like, we are so, I mean, it probably will be later next year when we get the next season, obviously. So, I don't know. I'm curious to see what the next storylines are going to be for next season. I'm also curious how people feel, because I've come across some stuff of this season not vibing with people. I haven't looked too deeply into it. Once again, I just come across stuff where you're just like, you know, the internet's the internet, and I'm watching this, so it's like I'm going to find, like, results and stuff that are going to pop up related to this. So I think some people are not vibing as much with this season. It does feel like this season is so much, like, there are comedy elements, which I feel like this season is not as comedic as the previous seasons. It feels like it's pulling a little bit of a Barry, where if you've seen the show Barry, it's a dark comedy, but the show gets more and more serious with every new season gets darker and darker. And yeah, there is still the funny, just like there are funny moments, like a lot of the Ted and Neil stuff are the funniest moments, but there are, like, funny elements throughout, but it feels like it is just a lot more dramatic. Feels like it's a very heavy season thematically. It makes sense with just everything going on. Like, once again, just like shit hit the fan in that season 2 finale, and you've just been feeling that heaviness resonate throughout the entire season in a lot of capacity. So, once again, if someone's not enjoying it, they're not enjoying it. I thoroughly enjoyed this season. I thought it was great. So, once again, to each their own type of situation. It's funny talking about reviews and stuff like that. So, either way, I'm excited to see ultimately where the bear will take us in part 4, rather season 4. What we didn't get the Francine or Francis, the Neil and Ted's sister. We got Sammy, but we didn't, and Uncle Gary, but we didn't get Francis. And once again, we still don't know what the hell the beef between her and Natalie is. So I was like, we didn't get it this season, but we gotta get it. We gotta get it next season. They've been teeing that up so much, and I'm like, I gotta find out. For one, who's going to play her, but also like, what was the beef? Like, why does like Nat seem to hate her guts? Because Neil and Ted are like, yeah, like our sister's pretty cool, but like, and like I said, like Michelle seemed to have the same beef, but I don't know if she inherited that beef because Nat had that beef, or was it more of a circumstance of it kind of affected all of them about the same? Whatever the case may be, that's a through line. I'm like, I need to see that next season. I got to find out what that whole situation is. So that's something I want to see. I definitely need to see from next season, but also just in general to see where everyone is next season. I mean, where do we pick up? Once again, we'll probably get a more detailed look at the review and find out what was actually said. It might be a thing of, it's not a bad review, but it's probably not a good review. It might be a very middling review. So you're like, well, what does that mean? If it's a very middle of the road review, if it's like a okay review, as long as it's not bad, but it's not good, it's okay. What does that mean for Cicero? So stuff like that. We'll ultimately have to wait to see what season 4 has in store for us. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.